There is something sacred about your spirit. It's not just your personality, not just your talent or your charm. Your spirit is the source. It's the part of you that carries peace when chaos is all around. It's the whisper that tells you to get up one more time after life's tried to knock the breath out of you. And because it's sacred, because it's powerful, you can't hand it out to just anybody like it's cheap. And you can't open your doors wide and let anybody walk through your soul like they pay rent there. Some people don't come to appreciate, they come to infiltrate. You got to understand, there are people walking this earth who are starving spiritually, not because they're hungry to grow, but because they want to feed off what you've built, off your light, off your healing, off your strength. They'll compliment you just enough to get close and then tear at your foundation like termites. You keep giving, thinking it's love, thinking it's kindness, thinking it's ministry, and all the while they're siphoning your spirit for parts. You think you're helping them, but all you're doing is letting them slowly dim what God put in you. You don't owe everyone access to the deepest parts of who you are. Just because someone says, "I love you," doesn't mean they're meant to walk beside you. Just because someone claps for you doesn't mean they're in your corner. Some people study you like a blueprint just so they can try to dismantle you from the inside. The same spirit that makes you magnetic also makes you a target. And the more you elevate, the more you gotta guard it. That's not pride, that's wisdom. You ever feel drained after talking to certain people? Like your energy got robbed, your peace got hijacked? That's not in your head, that's spiritual warfare. That's your intuition flashing red lights saying, this connection ain't clean, but you override it. You say, they need me. They're just hurt. Meanwhile, you're bleeding emotionally while they sip your spirit like it's wine. You can't keep letting people who haven't done the work enjoy the fruit of yours. Not everybody is qualified to carry your truth. Some people want your story without the pain. They want the glow without the grind. They want the outcome without walking through the fire. But it's that fire that purified your spirit in the first place. So when you casually hand it out, when you try to prove your worth or explain your heart to someone whose soul ain't even tuned to your frequency, you cheapen the very thing that makes you chosen. Stop doing that. You have to remember your spirit is a gift, not a product, not a performance, a gift. And when you keep handing that gift to people who don't even know how to unwrap it, let alone cherish it, you insult the very process that shaped you. Everybody doesn't deserve that backstage pass into your soul just because they smiled at the door. Some people are spectators, not supporters. And some are sent just to steal, kill, and destroy what you've been protecting all your life. You ever meet somebody who's all charm and light on the outside, but something in your gut said, watch that one? That's not paranoia, that's discernment. Because evil doesn't always show up in the way we expect. It's not always the loud, the obvious, the aggressive. Sometimes it's smooth, polished, looks you in the eye and calls you family. Demons don't knock on your door with red eyes and horns. Sometimes they wear perfume. Sometimes they wear a suit. Sometimes they sit next to you in church. See, we live in a world that tells us to judge people by how nice they are, how likable, how well they play the role. But charisma isn't character, and smiles don't mean safety. Some of the most dangerous spirits you'll ever encounter come dressed in decency. They know the right words. They know how to mirror your light. They study your language so they can blend in. Not because they're aligned, but because they're assigned, sent to distract, sent to deceive, sent to drain. The truth is, some folks don't like you. They just want to get close enough to figure out why everybody else does. And once they're in, once they gain your trust, they start working from the inside, whispering doubt, stirring confusion, making you question your instincts. And because they're smiling while they do it, you hesitate to confront it. You second guess yourself. You call it insecurity when it's really clarity dressed in warning. You think love means patience, means tolerance, means forgiveness. And yes, it does. But love doesn't mean blind access. Love doesn't mean ignoring spiritual red flags. You don't have to demonize someone to recognize the demon working through them. You can call it out without cursing the vessel, because sometimes good people carry bad spirits. Sometimes unresolved pain opens a door. Sometimes jealousy masks itself as concern. And if you're not watchful, you'll mistake poison for wisdom. You got to pray for sharper vision, not just for what's visible, but for what's spiritual. The eyes can deceive you, but the soul always knows. It picks up on things that logic tries to dismiss. That tight feeling in your chest when they walk in the room. That shift in the atmosphere when they speak. That slight anxiety you feel after leaving the conversation. That's not random. That's spiritual tension. That's your inner self recognizing something your outer self don't want to admit. The enemy knows he can't stop you from the outside, so he sends agents to your circle. Friendly ones, funny ones, loyal ones. And if you're not discerning, if you're not listening to that still small voice, you'll keep explaining, keep justifying, keep inviting them in, while they plant seeds meant to grow into your downfall. There comes a point where you have to realize that constantly explaining yourself isn't clarity, it's bondage. You keep thinking if you just say it the right way, they'll finally get it. If you just open up one more time, they'll finally understand your heart. But what if they don't want to understand? What if their confusion is a choice? What if their misunderstanding is their comfort zone? You're not correcting ignorance. You're feeding it attention it doesn't deserve. There are people who will pretend not to get you just so they can keep you stuck in a cycle of proving yourself. Every explanation becomes a performance. Every defense becomes a drain. And while you're over here unpacking your soul like a suitcase, they're not listening. They're watching. Not to grow, not to learn, but to collect ammunition, to twist your truth, to use your vulnerability against you when the moment serves them. That's not misunderstanding, that's manipulation. You think you're being honest. You think you're being transparent, but sometimes what you're really being is unguarded in front of people who have no business holding pieces of your spirit. You want so badly to be seen, to be accepted, that you start talking past your wisdom, past your peace. You keep giving explanations to people who aren't even qualified to ask the questions, and the more you talk, the less they respect it. Not because you're wrong, but because they were never listening to understand in the first place. Sometimes silence is your greatest form of self-respect. You don't owe your story to everybody who demands it. Some folks didn't walk with you through the fire, so they don't get to critique your ashes or your rising. Let them misunderstand, let them gossip, let them twist it. You don't need to clear the air with people who live in the fog. You don't need to break your back building a bridge they'll only burn once they cross. People who genuinely care will feel your spirit before they even hear your explanation. They'll know by your consistency, by your posture, by the weight you carry and the light you still manage to shine through it. The ones who love you don't need the whole speech. And the ones who keep pushing you to explain your worth, they don't see it and they're not trying to. You're handing out blueprints to people who only came to tear the building down. You were never meant to live your life on trial. You were never meant to keep begging for understanding, pleading for grace, fighting to be seen. That need to constantly explain who you are, where does it come from, whose approval are you still chasing, what lie told you that you weren't enough until someone else agreed that you are. You weren't put here to be liked. You were put here to move something, to shift something, to build something that outlives you. But too many people abort their calling because they can't handle the noise that comes with it, the comments, the criticism, the silence from people they expected to clap. But purpose doesn't need applause. Purpose needs obedience. And you can't obey your mission and be addicted to people pleasing at the same time. The problem is we've been trained to shrink when people don't get us, to doubt ourselves when folks question us. You post something real, they mock it. You step into your calling, they call it arrogance. But here's the truth, they don't hate what you're doing. They hate what it reminds them they're not doing. And instead of owning their fear, they throw shade on your focus. You end up wasting time editing your light to make insecure people feel comfortable in the dark. There will be people in your life who try to keep you in the version of yourself that made them feel safe. The smaller you, the quieter you, the less powerful you. Because your growth threatens their control. Your evolution reminds them they're standing still. So they'll tell you you've changed like that's an insult. But the truth is they were only loyal to your past. They were never built to walk beside your future. Your calling will offend the uncommitted. It will irritate people who gave up on their own assignment. That's not your fault. You weren't sent to blend in. You weren't sent to beg for permission. You were sent to carry something divine. And you cannot let temporary opinions detour you from eternal purpose. You don't need them to get it. You don't need them to like it. You just need to keep going, keep building, keep showing up like you were called to do. The weight you carry isn't random. The vision, the dreams, the passion, it wasn't planted in them, it was planted in you. So why are you waiting for their validation to move? Why are you hesitating just because they're too limited to see what you see? Your assignment is custom. Your anointing is specific. You were never meant to fit into the box they feel safe in. That box is too small for what's inside you. That box can't hold what's coming through you. If you keep bowing to every opinion, you'll end up betraying your own destiny. You'll be liked but empty, popular but unfulfilled, seen but not sent. And at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, the only question that'll matter is, did I do what I was born to do? We love to talk about blessings coming through people, how God sends help, sends encouragement, sends opportunity through relationships. But what we don't talk about enough is how the enemy sends people too. Same method, different motive. Same smile, different spirit. You're watching the surface while warfare is happening underneath it. Not every new connection is a blessing. Some are sent with the sole purpose of distraction, disruption, and spiritual decay. It doesn't always come with obvious evil. Sometimes the attack shows up in the form of a friend who slowly pulls you away from discipline. A relationship that feels good but costs your peace. A business partner who talks vision but walks in greed. It starts subtle. Late replies to prayer invite light jokes about your faith, casual pressure to compromise your standards. But little by little you find yourself drifting. That drift isn't accidental. That's strategy. The enemy knows he can't stop your purpose head on, so he sends someone to get close enough to redirect it, to plant doubt, to provoke your old self, to awaken insecurity just when you were stepping into confidence. And because it came through a familiar voice, you didn't see it as an attack. You saw it as real talk or tough love or just being honest. But sometimes it's not honesty. Sometimes it's a hit disguised as concern. Sometimes it's the enemy playing dress up in someone you trusted. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because you won't fight what you've confused for a friend. You won't guard against what you think came to help. You'll lower your defenses, you'll invite it in, and while you're sharing your heart, the enemy is studying your weak points, taking notes, figuring out what lie you're most likely to believe. That's how spiritual warfare works. It's rarely loud, rarely dramatic. It's often quiet, personal, wrapped in something that once felt like love. You have to be prayed up, not just for discernment, but for detachment. Because some of the hardest spiritual battles come when God says, let them go. And everything in your emotion says, but I love them. You think love should be enough to override warfare. You think loyalty can fix spirits. But when someone has become a doorway for attack, no amount of your compassion can close that door if they won't. You're trying to save them, but they're sinking you. You're not paranoid. You're not cold. You're not being too deep. You're being aware. You're recognizing patterns. You're noticing how your peace shifts around certain people, how your habits fall when certain voices get close. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. The same way God uses people to push you forward, the enemy uses people to pull you off track. Everybody talks about wanting to grow until growth actually shows up. Because growth doesn't just elevate you, it reveals everything around you that's not growing. And some people don't hate your success, they hate what it says about their own stagnation. You start healing and suddenly they say you've changed. You start setting boundaries and now you're difficult, but really what's happening is your evolution is irritating the parts of them they've been too afraid to confront. See, when you level up, you hold up a mirror to everyone still making excuses. You become a living reminder that comfort is a choice, that healing is possible, that discipline works. And instead of being inspired, instead of asking how'd you do it, they start projecting. They say you're fake. They say you're acting brand new. They say you're full of yourself. No, you're just full now, full of what you used to beg for. Peace, clarity, direction. And that fullness exposes their emptiness. There are spirits and people that were comfortable with your brokenness, comfortable with your insecurity, comfortable when you doubted yourself, when you needed their validation to feel worthy. But now you're waking up, you're walking different, you're thinking for yourself, and those spirits, they're panicking. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your healing means their control is over. And the demons that had access to you through them are now being evicted. You were easier to manage when you were unsure of yourself, when you second-guessed every decision, when you kept apologizing for being too much. But now that you've started owning your identity, they don't know what to do with you, so they try to drag you back down, back into drama, back into doubt, back into arguments that prove nothing. Because if they can't stop your growth, they'll try to distract it, delay it, discredit it. Don't take it personal when people start pulling away as you rise. Don't get stuck trying to explain your progress to folks who are committed to staying stuck. Some people liked you better when you were in pain, not because they wanted you to hurt, but because your pain made them feel better about their own. Now that you're climbing, their demons are screaming louder, not at you, but at what you represent, at the freedom you found that they're still too bound to pursue. This is why growth requires separation, not out of pride, not out of ego, but out of necessity. Because if you're not careful, you'll start shrinking just to keep people comfortable. You'll start downplaying your wins, muting your voice, softening your glow just to avoid conflict with spirits that were never meant to walk with you into your next season. There's something about walking in your light that naturally draws resistance. The brighter you shine, the more it exposes what's been hiding in the dark. And the truth is, some people don't want clarity. They don't want healing. They don't want truth. They've gotten comfortable in confusion. And when your light walks into a room, it disrupts that comfort. Not because you said anything, not because you judged anyone, just because you showed up. You'll notice it when you start to grow, how people get uncomfortable around your joy, how they flinch at your confidence, how your peace becomes a problem. It's not personal, it's spiritual. Your light reminds them of the light they buried, the faith they abandoned, the courage they ignored. And instead of owning that, they'll try to dim you through criticism, through distance, through subtle jabs masked as jokes. They'll call it humility. They'll call it being real, but really it's fear. Darkness always wants company. It wants you to blend in, to quiet down, to shrink, to apologize for what God placed inside you. And if you're not grounded, you'll start believing that being small makes you more lovable, that dimming yourself is the price you pay to keep peace. But peace bought at the cost of your identity is not peace, it's imprisonment. You were never meant to flicker just so someone else can feel more secure in their shadow. You have to remember, your light was given for a reason, not to impress, not to fit in, but to lead, to break cycles, to call things out, to make room for others to shine too. But none of that happens if you keep second-guessing your glow. You can't be the lighthouse and worry about who gets offended by the beam. You can't carry a calling and keep asking for permission to let it show. And sometimes it's not just the world that tries to dim you. It's your own inner voice, the one shaped by old wounds, by rejection, by fear of being too much. That voice that says, tone it down, when your spirit says, rise up. That internal darkness is the most dangerous kind because it sounds like wisdom when it's really insecurity in disguise. And you've got to be bold enough to recognize the difference. This light in you, it cost something. You fought for it. You prayed for it. You bled for it. Don't you dare trade it for comfort. Don't you dare hide it to make darkness feel safe. If your light makes people uncomfortable, that's not your cue to dim. It's your confirmation that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There comes a moment when you realize not every battle requires a response. Not every insult deserves your explanation. Not every challenge needs your energy. Silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's strategy. It's restraint sharpened by experience. When you've matured past the need to prove yourself, you start using silence as a shield. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing. You don't have to clap back to show strength. You don't have to argue to show truth. Some things are too sacred to be put on trial in front of people who never had the capacity to understand them. When your spirit is aligned, when your peace is real, you start recognizing how expensive your voice is. And you stop spending it on conversations that were never meant to grow you, just trap you. Your silence becomes your filter. What can't reach you without noise can't reach you at all. There are people who will provoke you just to drain you. They don't want answers. They want reactions. They want access to your energy so they can twist it, drain it, distort it. But when you stay quiet, when you refuse to give them what they came for, you starve the spirit behind the attack. You leave them confused, powerless. Because nothing frustrates the enemy more than a person who knows how to stand in stillness without folding. Silence creates space for clarity, for strength, for God to move. Some of your greatest growth will come in seasons where you stop explaining and start listening, not to the noise around you, but to the truth within you. In that stillness, you find alignment. In that quiet, you hear direction. Silence isn't about absence, it's about authority. It says, I don't need to respond to control the outcome. I don't need to fight to know I've already won. People will mistake your silence for weakness, for pride, for coldness. Let them. They're used to people who spill everything to stay relevant, to stay accepted, to stay seen. But silence is for the secure, the whole, the unshaken. When you're walking in purpose, you realize noise is often just distraction wearing urgency. And silence, real intentional silence, is how you separate what's important from what's just loud. Sometimes the most powerful move you'll ever make is not clapping back, not correcting the lie, not defending your name, but simply walking in the opposite direction with your mouth closed and your spirit intact.